Peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Okay, here we go. Exodus chapter 14, verse 14. Let's get into this. All right. 14:14. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And that one statement right there was everything that Israel needed to calm down and understand that they really didn't have any concerns. They were pretty much told, sit down, be quiet, watch God work. There's not even anything that you have to do. Just their only responsibility at this point, trust God. God has a way. God is going to bring you out of this. All you have to do is follow his instructions, do what he says. Verse 15, and the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. So Moses, obviously came before God, pleading, complaining because of the agitations of the children of Israel. And you'll see this actually play out multiple times throughout this Exodus account, where the children of Israel will murmur, they'll complain. Moses will come before God with their murmurings and complaints. And Moses, and if you read through this, was frustrated many times. And really, due to the frustrations of Moses in dealing with the Hebrew people, he actually fell short of actually making it into the promised land. Verse 16, but lift thou up thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. After all of the miracles they saw in Egypt, after all of the plagues and how they were protected through those plagues, you would think after you come up to this place where there's the ocean in front of you and Pharaoh and his armies behind you, there's no way to get out of this. You're cornered and you're going to escape when it looks like a situation that's unescapable. You would think at that point that they would trust God and be like, all right, he's brought us through enough and we've seen enough to know that we really don't have anything to worry about. But just like us, or us being just like them, that's not what they do. Verse 17, and I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all the host, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh and upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. So God, Israel, the Hebrew people didn't have to do anything to prove that the God they serve is the most high God of heaven and earth, the creator of everything, the ruler of everything. God was going to show himself to Pharaoh and to the Egyptian people. Think about what this would do moving forward. The Egyptians could have easily, after this point, tried to retaliate even after the children of Israel come out of this, but God has over and over again shown himself to the Egyptian people and shown the Egyptian people that the Hebrew people have favor with God And the Egyptian people know, yo, we just can't come up attacking these people. This is not going to work in our favor. So in doing all of this stuff, multiple things happen. One, they got out of bondage. And two, when the Egyptian people saw the power of God, now the Hebrew people are protected at least from the Egyptians' retaliation. Verse 19, and the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them, and it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. So God separated the Hebrew people from the Egyptians and protected them. So not only did they have a way of retreat, the Egyptians weren't even able to attack the Hebrew people as they retreated. So double protection. All things that the Hebrew people definitely need to look back on and need to remember at the times when they're at the height of their doubt. But just like many of us, we know how this plays out and we know what happens. Yeah, they don't remember this. Or they do remember it, but they don't bring it to mind whenever they have those serious doubts. Verse 21, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all the night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left. Again, this is one of those things that anybody who's there at this time, this is something that definitely needs to be broadcast to their children, the children that never got to see this. And the children need to know this actually happened. We are not making this up. This is an actual event. And God told them that. You remember what we read in the last chapter, how they were supposed to recite these things before their children from generation to generation so they wouldn't forget. There's a reason they shouldn't forget these things, because these things will keep the majesty, the glory, the mercy, and the judgment of God ever before their minds. Verse 23, and the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. So Pharaoh just knew he was getting ready to get these Hebrews. He was coming up on them, and he was ready to get his slaves back, blind to anything else going on. Now you would think, right? Let's a little bit of common sense and reasoning. You've seen what happened with all of the plagues while you were in Egypt. Your firstborn was killed, and I'm sure he's still ticked over that. You're following the children of Israel. You see that the sea has parted for them. There's a wall of water on both sides. A rational person would say, now remember what happened with all those plagues. What's the likelihood that the God that they serve allows me to walk in the midst of this sea when they've exited, and doesn't collapse this right on me and all my men and chariots and horses? That would have been a rational thought, but Pharaoh at this point, I believe, is filled with rage, contempt, and jealousy. Verse 25, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. So even the Egyptian people at this point realized, they don't even have to lift a finger. There's nothing that they even have to do. All they have to do is flee, and we are being mopped up right here in the midst of this dry ground with this wall of water on both sides. So after the fit of rage, some of them are beginning to wake up like, wait a minute, this is probably not a good idea. Yeah, it's a little too late at this point. Verse 26. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waves may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. So now think about that again. They're seeing the protection that God has provided to the Hebrew people. And not only that, a good portion of Pharaoh's army is getting mopped up. The children of Israel did not have to lift one solitary finger. All they had to do was walk on dry land over to the other side. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them, but the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So this produced a proper reverential respect and fear for God as they saw this happen. Now, I'm not going to get what I like to call extra supernatural. Some people like to get extra supernatural and they like to look at events and accounts that happen in the Old Testament, and they try to make it like this is the type of things that happen in their life on a continual basis. Realistically speaking, when you look in the Old Testament, when you look at the miracles and the things that were done, it wasn't like these things were happening on a continual basis, right? Like these are the accounts we have of a chronology, so to speak, of the events of God dealing with the Hebrew people. But you're not seeing constant miracles and constant things like the parting of the Red Sea. Nonetheless, when these people see these things, they have a proper fear for God. They understand who God is. They understand his power. They understand his protection. And they also understand his deliverance and his judgment. All of those things they understand from what they saw transpire between them and the Egyptians. And there's a lot of similarities but between this and New Testament ideas. I'm not going to jump into that right now, but definitely something worth looking at. A lot of these books, and I know I've said it before, I plan on going back through again, but a lot slower, maybe just covering a little bit at a time, going over some things and doing a little bit of a deep dive. These readings for me right now are more of a, I wouldn't say a light skim. They're a little heavier, looking a little deeper into some things, but really not going like 10 and 12 levels deep. So that's something that I plan on coming back through a lot of these books and doing again. But definitely, as always, thank you for everyone who has joined me, everyone who watches the podcast, and everyone who listens. I appreciate it. I am nobody. I'm just a guy on the internet sharing his thoughts. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.